Wiregrass, Sweet Onions, and Long Shadows. The Story of Toombs County, Georgia. Introduction. A Land of Contrasts. In the heart of southeast Georgia, where the land is a tapestry of pine forests and wiregrass, and the dark, tannin-stained waters of the Altamaha and Ohoopee rivers carve their patient paths to the sea, lies Toombs County. It is a place of deep and resonant contradictions. This is the soil that, through a quirk of geology and a stroke of desperate luck, gave the world an onion so uniquely sweet it became a global phenomenon. It is a community that celebrates this sweet harvest with joyous festivals of music, food, and fellowship. Yet it is also a county that bears the name of one of the Confederacy's most defiant and unreconstructed figures, a man who refused to reconcile with the nation his home was a part of. It is a place of deep community bonds, but one haunted by long shadows of racial violence and profound injustice. The story of Toombs County is the story of this paradox, a chronicle of how sweetness and bitterness, progress and defiance can grow from the very same soil. Part 1. Forging a County from Forest and Farm. Before the arrival of deeds, plats, and county lines, the land that would become Toombs County was the domain of the Creek Indians, its original inhabitants. The first significant wave of white settlers to arrive were Scots Highlanders, many of whom had first settled in North Carolina before making their way into the Georgia wiregrass. They established a rugged agrarian society dominated by small farms. Throughout the 19th century, the economy was a simple one, rooted in the land and reliant on the cultivation of livestock, corn, and cotton. It was a life dictated by the seasons, a world away from the political tempest brewing in Washington and the state capitol. The Unreconstructed Rebel, the life and legacy of Robert Toombs. When Toombs County was officially created on August 18, 1905, carved from portions of Emanuel, Montgomery, and Tattnall counties, it was named for a man who embodied the most turbulent chapter of Georgia's history. Robert Augustus Toombs. Born in 1810 to a wealthy planter family, Toombs was a man of immense privilege and formidable intellect, known for his fiery oratory and irascible personality. His political career was a study in transformation. Initially, Toombs was a dedicated Unionist. As a Whig in the U.S. House and later the Senate, he, along with his close friend Alexander Stephens, fought to preserve the nation. He was a key supporter of the Compromise of 1850 and the Georgia Platform, which sought to quell the rising of a secessionist fervor by finding a middle ground on the issue of slavery. However, as the 1850s wore on, his faith in the Union eroded. By 1860, with the election of Abraham Lincoln, Toombs had fully radicalized, becoming one of the Senate's most ardent, fire-eating secessionists. He dramatically resigned his Senate seat in 1861 and returned to Georgia to help lead the state out of the Union. He harbored ambitions of becoming president of the new Confederate nation, but was passed over for Jefferson Davis, a slight that turned Toombs into a bitter critic of the Davis administration. He served briefly and unhappily as the Confederacy's first Secretary of State before resigning to become a brigadier general, though he performed creditably and was wounded at the Battle of Antietam. It was his life after the war, however, that cemented the legacy for which the county is named. Refusing to be captured by Union troops, Toombs fled to Cuba and then Europe. Upon his return in 1867, he defiantly refused to request a pardon or take the oath of allegiance to the United States, earning him the moniker of the Unreconstructed Rebel. He dedicated his final years to dismantling Reconstruction, playing a dominant role in the drafting of the Georgia Constitution of 1877, a document designed to restore white supremacy. By naming the county for him in 1905, its founders etched the legacy of defiance into the very identity of the land. The Iron Horse arrives. Even as the county's name looked back to the Old South, its future was being forged by the quintessential symbol of 19th century progress, the railroad. The arrival of the rail lines in the 1890s was a transformative event, bringing a new wave of settlers from nearby counties and North Carolina, drawn by the promise of the region's vast forest of timber and naval stores. Towns sprang up along the tracks. Lyons, the county seat, was incorporated on December 9, 1897, named in honor of a railroad official who convinced the Seaboard Airline Railway to build through the area. Vidalia, the county's largest city, was incorporated in 1890. It was first called Jenkins Station after a local landowner, but was soon renamed. The most likely story attributes the name Vidalia to the daughter of Samuel Hawkins, president of the Savannah, Americus, and Montgomery Railroad, who may have found the name on a map referencing Vidalia, Louisiana, or perhaps contracted the phrase Via Dahlia, meaning by the route of the dahlias. This dynamic reveals a fundamental tension at the heart of the county's creation. Its name honored a man who resisted the nation's future, while its main towns were built by the very engine of industrial change that was shaping it. Part 2. The Sweetest Accident in Georgia History. The Great Depression brought hardship to Toombs County as it did everywhere. Farmers struggled to get a fair price for their crops and many faced ruin. It was in this climate of desperation that a happy accident occurred, one that would forever change the county's destiny. In the late spring of 1931, a farmer named Mose Coleman harvested his onion crop, expecting the usual pungent, hot variety. Instead, he discovered his onions were mild and sweet. The unique, low-sulfur, sandy soil of the region had produced a culinary fluke. At first, selling them was a struggle, but Coleman preserved and managed to sell them for $3.50 per 50-pound bag, an astonishing price for the time. To other farmers watching their cotton and corn prices plummet, it looked like Coleman had struck a gold mine. They quickly began planting the sweet onions themselves, hoping for the same fortune. Building a sweet onion empire. A unique product is one thing. Building an empire is another. The rise of the Vidalia onion was not merely an accident of geology, but a masterclass in branding, distribution, and legal strategy. The first crucial step came in the 1940s when the state of Georgia built a farmers market in Vidalia. Before the interstate system, Vidalia was a major crossroads, and travelers passing through began to hear about those sweet onions from Vidalia, giving the crop its now famous name. The next leap came from a corporate partnership. The Piggly Wiggly supermarket chain happened to have a distribution center in Vidalia and was the first major retailer to recognize the onion's potential. Soon, Vidalia onions were appearing on grocery store shelves across the region. Production grew steadily from about 600 acres in the mid-1970s to a national marketing push that saw production increase tenfold over the next decade. With fame came fraud. By the late 1970s, unscrupulous dealers were bagging onions from other states and selling them as Vidalias, threatening the brand's integrity and the livelihood of local farmers. The growers realized their natural advantage was worthless without legal protection. They organized and fought back, waging a campaign that led to two landmark victories. First came the Vidalia Onion Act of 1986, a Georgia state law that officially defined the 20-county production area. Only onions grown within this specific geographic zone could legally be called Vidalia onions. This was followed in 1989 by the Federal Marketing Order No. 955, which extended this protection to the national level and created the Vidalia Onion Committee to oversee marketing and research. The final seal of approval came in 1990 when the Vidalia onion was named Georgia's official state vegetable. What began as a farmer's lucky mistake had become a legally protected, internationally recognized brand. Part 3. Crime, Conflict, and the Struggle for Justice. Beneath the veneer of quiet rural life, a darker history has long coursed through Toombs County. A 1926 article in Time magazine delivered a chilling assessment. To say that such hooded mobs rule Georgia is an exaggeration. To say that they rule Toombs County is almost true. The article documented a reign of terror by the Ku Klux Klan and its imitators. Attorney Wimberly E. Brown was abducted in broad daylight and brutally flogged for having prosecuted Klansmen. W.T. Simon's home was invaded by robed men who fired bullets into his front door. Farmer Cliff Collins, his 20-year-old daughter, and his son were all dragged from their home and beaten. Willie Wilson was shot and killed in his bedroom while he and his wife cared for their sick baby. In one of the most horrific accounts, a black man accused of stealing turnip seed was tied to the rear axle of a car and dragged to his death. This was a period when organized violence, used to enforce brutal social order, operated with terrifying impunity. The Mallard Murder Case, a community on trial, 1948. This dark thread of history would be laid bare for the nation to see in 1948. Robert "Duck" Mallard was a successful black traveling salesman. and his wife, Amy James Mallard, was a college-educated schoolteacher. They were prosperous and respected, and in the rigid hierarchy of the Jim Crow South, their very success, symbolized by their shiny new Frazier automobile, was a provocation. The political climate was toxic. Herman Talmadge was running for governor on a staunchly segregationist platform, and the Ku Klux Klan was resurgent. Just weeks before the murder on October 28, 1948, some 300 Klansmen held a parade in Vidalia, an event that was personally escorted into town by Toombs County Sheriff R.E. Gray and the local police chief. On the night of November 20th, Robert and Amy Mallard, along with their young son and 2 cousins, were returning home when their car was blocked by a mob of about 20 robed men near a white church. A cry of "Hands up" was followed by a volley of gunfire. A single bullet pierced the windshield and struck Robert Mallard in the chest, killing him instantly in front of his family. The aftermath was a grotesque parody of justice. Sheriff Gray, upon arriving at the scene, did not pursue the killers, but instead searched the grieving widow's pocketbook. He publicly dismissed her account, calling her late husband a bad Negro. Then, in a stunning turn, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation arrested Amy Mallard and charged her with her husband's murder. She was held for approximately 9 hours and then released. Later, 2 white men were arrested in connection with the crime. The subsequent trial of the 2 accused, William Howell and Roderick Clifton, was a farce. Amy Mallard bravely took the stand to identify the men she saw that night. The defense attorney then called 2 sitting jurors as character witnesses to declare that they would not believe her under oath. After just 25 minutes of deliberation, the all-white jury acquitted Howell, and the charges against Clifton were dropped. Amy Mallard, refusing to be silenced, embarked on a national speaking tour with the NAACP, proclaiming, "There's no law in Georgia, just dirty men." For her courage, the Mallard family home in Lyons was burned to the ground on July 4th, 1949. An act that the sheriff dismissed as just an accident. The case, a stark example of racially motivated violence and systemic injustice, spurred the creation of the Atlanta Negro Voters League. Modern battles against new shadows. The pattern of recognized groups exploiting the vulnerable for power and profit has persisted in the modern era, though its form has evolved. In recent years, Toombs County has been the epicenter of several massive federal law enforcement operations targeting sophisticated criminal enterprises. Operation Ace in the Hole 2020. This investigation culminated in a 61-count federal indictment against 26 defendants involved in a drug trafficking ring connected to the Gangster Disciples criminal street gang, which was a major supplier of methamphetamine, cocaine, and other illicit drugs in the Vidalia area. Operation Ghost Busted 2023. In what was called the largest indictment of its kind in the Southern District of Georgia, 76 defendants were charged in conspiracy linked to the Ghostface Gangsters, a white supremacist gang that began in the Georgia prison system. The network trafficked huge quantities of meth, fentanyl, and heroin throughout Toombs and surrounding counties, even using a compromised prison guard to facilitate their operations from behind bars. Operation Blooming Onion 2021. This case exposed a horrifying scheme of modern-day slavery. A federal indictment charged 24 defendants with running a human smuggling and forced labor ring that exploited migrant workers brought to the U.S. on H-2A agricultural visas to work in the onion fields. The workers were subjected to brutal conditions, forced to dig onions with their bare hands for 20 cents a bucket, threatened with guns, and physically abused. The indictment alleges the conspirators reaped over $200 million from the scheme, while at least 2 workers died from the result of these conditions. These modern cases, alongside ongoing battles against local gang activity, such as the 2025 indictment of Crips members for a shooting in Vidalia, show that the fight for justice in Toombs County continues. The targets and methods have changed, but the underlying theme of organized groups preying on the vulnerable remains a persistent, dark echo of the past. A Cold Night in Santa Claus, the Daniels family tragedy. In Toombs County, there is a small incorporated town called Santa Claus. It is a place built on a theme of Christmas cheer with streets named Candy Cane Road and December Drive. A place that bills itself as the town who loves children. But in the cold, early morning hours of December the 4th, 1997, this idyllic town became the setting for a crime so brutal it would shatter the community's sense of peace forever. The victims were the Daniels family. Danny, age 47, and his wife Kim, 33, were well known in the small town for their kindness and generosity, particularly for opening their home to foster children in need. Their own blended family was large, a bustling household of their own children and those they cared for. One of those former foster children was a girl named Joanne Heidler. Through her, the family became acquainted with her 20-year-old brother, Jerry Scott Heidler. In the months leading up to the tragedy, Heidler had started a relationship with the Daniels' 16-year-old daughter, Jessica. Disapproving, Danny Daniels told Heidler to stop visiting the home. Heidler's life was already unraveling. Just days before the murders, he and his girlfriend suffered the loss of a stillborn son. He attended the funeral on December the 3rd and later told investigators that in his grief, his mind just went blank, and all he could feel was rage. In the dead of the night, that rage found a target. Heidler drove to the Daniels' home in Santa Claus, broke in through a bathroom window, and took a Remington shotgun from the family's gun cabinet. He walked to the master bedroom and shot Danny and Kim Daniels as they slept. When 16-year-old Jessica ran into the room, he shot her in the back of the head. He then went to the bathroom of 8-year-old Bryant Daniels and killed him as he slept. Seeing that Danny was still clinging to life, Heidler shot him 3 more times. The carnage didn't stop. Heidler left the 2 youngest children, a 4-year-old boy and a 10-month-old infant, unharmed in the house amidst the horror. He then kidnapped 3 of the young daughters, drove them to a secluded area, and sexually assaulted one of them before abandoning all 3 on a dark county road in Bacon County. A farmer found the terrified girls wandering in their nightgowns and called the police. Heidler's actions after the massacre were chillingly calm. He threw the murder weapon into a river, visited the grave of his infant son, and then went to his mother's house, where he played video games and went to sleep. The surviving girls quickly identified Heidler, and he was arrested. He confessed, telling police that he remembered the events as if it were in a dream. The case drew so much attention that the trial had to be moved out of Toombs County. His lawyers argued that a lifetime of abuse and mental illness meant he should be found guilty, but mentally ill. The jury disagreed. After deliberating for only 20 minutes, they found him guilty on all 11 counts. Jerry Scott Heidler was sentenced to death for the murders of 4 people, a crime that brought a horrifying and tragic meaning to the name Santa Claus, Georgia. Part 4. The Soul of the County. Landmarks, Legends, and Lore. Echoes from the Riverbanks. Tales from the Altamaha. Toombs County's soul is not only found in its official history, but in the stories it tells about itself. The most vital repository of this cultural memory is Tales from the Altamaha, an award-winning folk life play performed annually in the historic Blue Marquee Theater in Lyons. The play is a living archive, drawing its material from the newspaper columns of Colonel T. Ross Sharp, a former state representative and local historian who spent years collecting the true stories, scandals, gossip, and folklore of the region's settlers. Each year, a new collection of these tales is brought to life by local volunteer actors, creating an event that is by turns hilarious and heartbreaking. Accompanied by the River Rat Review Band, which plays old-time gospel and classic tunes, the play keeps the oral and musical traditions of the area alive for a new generation. To ensure that the stories never run out, the organizers even sponsor an Interview with an Octogenarian writing contest, encouraging local students to collect new histories from their elders. Alti, the river monster. Flowing along the county's southern border is the mighty Altamaha River, a waterway rich not only in history, but also in legend. It is said to be the home of the Altamaha, or Alti, Georgia's very own Loch Ness monster. The legend predates European settlement, originating with the Muskogee Creek tribe, and was likely embellished by the arrival of Scottish Highlanders from Inverness, who brought their own tales of a lake monster with them. Alti is described as a 20 to 30 foot long creature with a gray or green sturgeon-like body, a bony ridge down its back, front flippers, and the snout of a crocodile. Sightings have been reported for centuries, from timbermen in the 1920s to fishermen in the 1980s, ensuring that the mystery of what lurks in the Altamaha's dark waters endures. A tour through time, the historic places of Toombs. The history of Toombs County is written in its buildings, a collection of grand homes, humble farmsteads, and civic structures that tell the story of its evolution. The County Courthouse Saga. The seat of government in Lyons has had a dramatic history. The first courthouse, completed in 1906, was destroyed by a fire in 1917. A second was built in 1919, which served the county until 1964, when it was replaced by a modern structure that was widely considered one of the most unattractive courthouses in the state. In 2024, that building was demolished to make way for the fourth and current Toombs County Courthouse, a magnificent $35 million facility completed in 2023. In a fitting tribute to the county's most famous product, its dome is crowned with a sculpture of a Vidalia onion. The Grandeur of Lyons. Robert and Missouri Garbett House. Known as 20 Columns, this is the grandest home in Lyons, built for a timber baron who helped shape the town's early economy. A charming anecdote recalls that a small room on the top floor contained a neatly tied copy of every newspaper ever published by the Lyons Progress. The Alberta Hotel. Built in 1905, this hotel was once the social hub of the county. Its guest list reportedly including such famous figures as Gone with the Wind author Margaret Mitchell and the notorious gangster Al Capone. Vidalia's architectural gems. The Crawford W. Brazel House, 1911. This stately neoclassical home now serves a public purpose as the Altamahaw Museum of Art and History. It houses a diverse collection, including 18th century Staffordshire porcelain, prints by John James Audubon, and a unique room dedicated to the history of the Girl Scouts. The Leader Rosansky House, 1903. A blend of Queen Anne and neoclassical styles, this is the only surviving home of any of Vidalia's founding fathers. It was built for Moses Latter and Nahum Aaron Rosansky, two Polish Jewish immigrants who fled anti-Semitism and went on to build the largest department store in the area, playing a pivotal role in the developing of the town's commercial district. The Peterson Wilbanks House, 1916. This elegant home was built for the wife of one of the area's largest landowners and was later owned by W. Franklin Jenkins, the grandson of Vidalia's founder. The Rural Legacy, Macklemore Sharp Farmstead. Located southwest of Vidalia, this farmstead is a tangible link to the county's agrarian past. It features two distinct homes, a log cabin built in 1864, with logs prepared and bricks made by an enslaved person, and a more modern wood-framed farmhouse from 1903. Together, the buildings and their outbuildings illustrate the evolution of a two-generation family farm in South Georgia. Part 5. Celebration and Legacy, Festivals and Famous Faces. The public identity of Toombs County today is largely defined by its vibrant celebrations and the remarkable individuals who have called it home. This is the story the county chooses to tell about itself, a narrative of resilience, strength, and traditional Southern values that often stands in contrast to the more complicated chapters of its past. The Sweet Onion Festival. Each spring, the community comes together for the Vidalia Onion Festival, a 4-day extravaganza celebrating the harvest of its world-famous crop. The festival's roots go back to a humble arts and crafts show started in 1974 by the Vidalia Women's Club and the Lions Club. By 1978, this Spring Fest had been officially rebranded to promote the onion, and it has since grown into a nationally recognized event featured on the Food Network. The modern festival is a spectacle of Southern culture, featuring a professional air show, a rodeo, major country music concerts headlined by stars like Clint Black, a street dance with fireworks, a recipe contest, and of course, the world-famous onion eating contest. The Real Squeal. In the fall, the focus shifts from onions to barbecue. The Real Squeal Barbecue and Music Festival began in 2010, born from a simple idea between two locals who attended a barbecue competition elsewhere and thought, we can do better. They did. Now a 2-day event sanctioned by the prestigious Kansas City Barbecue Society, the Real Squeal draws professional and amateur pitmasters to Lyons for a fierce but friendly competition celebrating Southern food and music, complete with its own street dance and fireworks display. Notable sons and daughters. Toombs County has produced a remarkable number of individuals who have made their mark on the state and the nation. Iris Faircloth Blitch, born 1912, died 1993. A political trailblazer born in the community of Normantown, Blitch was the first woman to serve 2 terms in the Georgia Senate and one of the first Georgia women elected to the U.S. Congress, where she served from 1955 to 1963. Her legacy is complex. While a champion for women in politics, She was also a signer of the 1956 Southern Manifesto, which vowed to resist school desegregation. Mel Blount, born in 1948, a true rags-to-riches story. Mel Blount grew up in Vidalia in a home without plumbing or electricity. He went from Lyons High School to become a dominant Hall of Fame cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, winning 4 Super Bowls as a cornerstone of the legendary Steel Curtain defense of the 1970s. Fred Stokes, born in 1964. Born in Vidalia, Stokes played only a single year of high school football before earning a scholarship to Georgia Southern University. He went on to a 10-year NFL career as a defensive end, winning Super Bowl 26 with the Washington Redskins. Travaris Tillman. Tillman was born October 8, 1977 in Lyons, Georgia. He attended Toombs County High School in Lyons and was a standout in football, basketball, and golf. Tillman attended Georgia Tech for 4 years and was elected one of Tech's permanent team captains for the 1999 season. Tillman played for the Miami Dolphins, the Houston Texans, and the Buffalo Bills professionally. Nick Eason. Nick Eason was born May 29, 1980 in Lyons, Georgia, and attended Toombs County High School. Eason played college football for the University of Clemson in South Carolina. He was drafted in the 4th round of the NFL Draft 2003 and would play for 11 seasons in the National Football League with the Broncos, Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Arizona Cardinals. Eason won a Super Bowl ring for the 2008 season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Paul Anderson, born 1932, died 1994. Though born in Toccoa, Paul Anderson's life work is inextricably linked to Toombs County. After an incredible career in which he won an Olympic gold medal and was universally known as the world's strongest man, Anderson dedicated his life to his Christian faith. In 1961, he and his wife founded the Paul Anderson Youth Home in Vidalia, a haven for troubled young men that continues his legacy of strength and service to this day. Craig Campbell, born 1979. A native of Lyons, Campbell is a successful country music singer known for hits like Family Man, which reflect the small-town values of his upbringing. Conclusion. A story still being written. To understand Toombs County is to embrace its contradictions. It is the land of Robert Toombs, the unyielding rebel, and also the land of the Vidalia Onion, a symbol of sweet success born from the heart. It is a place whose history includes both the dark terror of a lynch mob and the bright joy of a community festival. It is home to the folklore of the Altamaha River Monster and the very real struggles against modern crime. In this way, Toombs County is a microcosm of the American South itself, a region constantly negotiating its relationship with its complicated past while forging a new identity for the future. The story of this place is not a simple one, and it is far from over. The new courthouse with its onion dome, the annual retelling of old stories at the Blue Marquee Theater, and the ongoing fight for justice in its courts all show that this is a community still in the process of writing the next chapter in its complex, compelling, and deeply human story.